Beast of Reincarnation has almost everything it needed to get me interested right at the start. I like the setting, I like the fast action combat, I like games that give me a weird companion and a bunch of skills to experiment with, and I like the idea of a post-apocalyptic world that's being swallowed by nature. This is exactly the type of world I want to explore and engage with. After playing Beast of Reincarnations, I don't think anyone should. Hi, I'm Vadd. In today's review, I have to tell you, this is one of the blandest, most repetitive games on the market in the history of video games. And the biggest problem here isn't that any one system completely fails by itself. It's that Beast of Reincarnation shows you everything it has in the first opening moments, minutes, hours, and it spends the entire rest of the journey recycling everything. Let's be clear here. If you're new here, you might not know this, but usually I leave a lot of room in a review for players who might enjoy something more than I did. I believe that different taste exists, and weird games will find a weird audience that loves them. Here with the Beast of Reincarnation, I genuinely struggled to identify the person I would even recommend barely choosing to spend money or time in this. Because even at the very start, it launches with the most awful default settings you can imagine. For some reason, cutscenes were locked at 24 FPS, the language was not set to my native language, everything was just wrong. The post-processing, the motion blur, the depth of field, every setting you could possibly imagine was just busted. You had to spend a significant portion of early time on technical difficulties to get the game to function and look reasonable. Yes, you can fix this, you can work around this. This is a terrible start to this game, and the presentation here is only one part of the opening problems. To be clear, the strange thing here is that the opening moments aren't terrible. The combat is built around fast attacks, there's very generous parry timing for a parry-focused game, and you have a wolf companion named Ku. And Ku has a surprisingly flexible skill tree. You can build him around his damage, his healing, his debuffs, he can trigger status effects. I like to use him to heal and proc some status effects, but that setup became way too strong, way too fast. Why am I healing when my companion heals me all the time? Why am I doing combos when he stuns things or he gets his status effects off? Our main character, Emma, gets plenty of upgrades as well. There's this massive hair-based skill system and combat system that gives you different ways you can build your character and move around the environment. There's a true freedom that your character has in the way they can interact with the world. You can jump, you can grapple, you can use your traversal abilities to create literal bridges and different paths. There's so many pieces here that are good. And in those opening moments, I truly believe there was something special here. The art, I like the world, but the reality is the Beast of Reincarnation never develops any of it. All of the technical execution on these systems is empty. The enemy variety is extremely limited. Once you learn the handful of common robots in Beast, you will fight the same threat the entire way through. Attacks are telegraphed, and once you understand the basic rhythm and you start the parry things, nothing can defeat you. And this gets even worse when you find out that most every skill in the skill tree at its furthest ledge is just going to break every. There's so many skills in there you can start spamming and just repeatedly lock down enemies. They just can't deal with the skills you're literally given to use. And again, your animal companion completely overheals you. The longer you play, the more overpowered you are, and you get so overpowered so early on without any exploration. There's no challenge in after the first 20% of the game, there's nothing left to challenge you. Sure, you can raise the difficulty, but you still are overhealed and have overpowered combat abilities. It's crazy. There's no balance here. Yes, the combat system technically keeps giving you new tools, but ignoring the balance problems, there's no new enemies that ever require those tools. You're fighting the exact same enemies over and over again. There's no reason to experiment with all these skills, because why care about a new attack when the thing standing in front of you is the exact same enemy you fought every 60 seconds through every combat encounter? Adding insult to injury, the bosses are where the repetition becomes absolutely inexcusable. They all have the same very small moveset. You learn a couple of attacks, you learn how to parry, and it's over. The fight ends, and the game reuses the same bosses. I don't mean reinterprets, I mean quite literally copy, paste, Control C, Control V. Sometimes you might say, well, it's a reinterpretation, it's a reincarnated version. It's the same boss. You're going to do it not just once, not just twice. You're going to keep fighting these bosses over and over again. Who, by the way, are reskinned enemies. They're just blown up versions of the same enemies you've been fighting quite a few times already. That's right, the base mobs get expanded into the final bosses, and then you just fight the boss again. It's insane whoever allowed this. To me, this just feels like such a wasted opportunity. You have a game literally called Beast of Reincarnation. Let's build on this premise. Let's make the repetition a part of these mutant fights. Change the creatures, have them reincarnate, have them come back in a phase 2, change the moveset, change the arena. Do anything to make me rethink what I learned in the first phase. Instead, the only thing this game asks you to do is to repeat the same fight again and again and again and again and again. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you like that. Maybe you think the world and setting is enough, you love the art design, and you don't mind fighting the exact same enemy for the next 15 to 45 hours. Oh, okay. Maybe you like that. Maybe that's something you like. Well, then have I got a game for you? Because I got to tell you, the reputation doesn't just exist in the enemy variety, it's the literal world itself. For me, the setting here should be one of the game's strongest assets. You have a civilization that has collapsed, you have nature reclaiming things, there's a soundtrack here that genuinely builds a strong atmosphere, but it turns out that when you move through these spaces, it is the most boring thing you can do. We have a fun skill tree, we have fun movement abilities, but the environment just repeats the same visual ideas. The level design just feels empty. And oftentimes these optional pathways rarely lead to anything interesting. There's no reason to stop and explore things. You're already overpowered. What could you possibly pick up? And you have so much traversal freedom, but that freedom doesn't matter when the destination is another bland, generic pickup you don't need, or just another enemy group you fought 1,000 times already. There's just more empty geometry in the environment. Beast of Reincarnation gives you so many upgrades early. Weapons, armor, skill, your companion abilities, status effects, and this creates this early momentum where you're constantly getting stronger, but the system has peaked. Your core build comes online way too early and there's no pressure to ever change it. Again, your animal companion provides an absurd amount of sustain, status effects are way overpowered, and the enemy roster never truly expands. And ignoring all of that, the bosses don't demand any kind of different strategy. Your progression becomes more stuff without any stronger reason to use any of it. The story has all the exact same problems as the gameplay. It takes too long and says too little. I think there's such an interesting concept underneath all of this. You have this emotionally distant protagonist, and the game is really trying to build a story around this connection, around identity, around her relationship with the people in the world around her, but the presentation is painfully flat. Characters do not have enough accurate animations or expressions. Conversations repeatedly circle around simple, basic emotional ideas. You're often seeing the back of characters and no animation at all, just still images essentially. This main character, Emma, has such a detached personality that it's almost hard to figure out what the story is trying to do. It doesn't automatically make her interesting to watch because he's in a cool world. This character can be emotionally muted and the entire story feels lifeless. There's just too many scenes where you're waiting for the meaning to arrive and it never does. And this might be maybe the Beast of Reincarnation's here biggest problem. It keeps asking you to wait for the interesting part. Wait for the combat to evolve. It doesn't. Wait for new enemies. They aren't there. Wait for the next boss. It's a repeat. Wait for the story to become compelling. It won't. Wait for the world to open up. It's the same environment. And eventually you realize you've already seen what the game is. For me, the frustrating part here is that there is a better version of Beast of Reincarnation hiding inside this one. There's clearly some people who worked on this that had a vision and that had a talent, and the technical execution completely fell short. If we could have made this shorter, cut out the repeat bosses, cut out the empty spaces, cut all the conversations that don't move anything forward, tighten down the enemy roster around the few meaningful encounters you actually have, and, if Beast of Reincarnation actually makes the reincarnation mechanic mechanically matter. We could do so many cool things with that enemy that you slay and it reincarnates itself because of good lore reasons, with new moves, new arena, new anything. And your animal companion is so interesting. It's enough to support this deeper combat battle. This setting here is strong enough to support a truly memorable world, and Beast of Reincarnation fails to capitalize on any of this. One of my favorite things to talk about is the value for money. We do this in every review, and this isn't a case where I might say, hey, wait for a sale. A lower price does not fix the core fundamental problems with the repetition, with the lighting, with the camera angle, with the level design, with the deep skill tree but meaningless narrative. It just doesn't excuse reused bosses. It doesn't make them suddenly interesting. And this isn't something that can be patched. There are no obvious answers here, because most of what bothers me here, most of my struggles here are structural. This would require a truly better game inside the existing game. You would have to fundamentally change this entire package, and they're not going to do that. They're not going to suddenly say, hey, you're right, 95% of these enemies should not be here, and the world is massively bloated, and we never use the traversal mechanics to their fullest extent. That would require a fundamental change to the core of this game, which means you can't fix it with a patch. Normally, this is where I give you the niche, right? I talk about, hey, this is for you, it's not for you. Maybe you love parry-heavy action games, maybe the aesthetic is enough for you, maybe you want something easier than the usual Souls-adjacent action games, maybe you like having a companion who can make your build extremely, powerful or forgiving. But even here, I think there are too many better ways to spend your time. This game does not exist in a vacuum. It is not the only game in town. And there are games that, I personally don't like, but objectively, I look at my score sheet and I go, you know what? For the right person, it's easy to recommend this. This is not one of them. The Beast of Reincarnation has a good premise. It has a few decent combat ideas. I love Coup. It's a good companion mechanic. The music is strong. The atmosphere is strong. The setup is strong. And every once in a while, the world just briefly looks and feels like the game I wanted this to be. And then it says, hey, I'm just going to repeat those ideas until there's nothing left of them. The enemies are repetitive, the bosses are repetitive, the environment is repetitive, the storyteller is repetitive, and even the progression eventually stops giving you any meaningful reason to interact with it. The Beast of Reincarnation is bland, lifeless, and padded, and has taken such a wonderful setup, idea, and system and made it boring. At the time of review, the Beast of Reincarnation is awarded a 1 out of 5. I do not recommend.